Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is TWiT Photo with Catherine Hall and Leo Laporte, episode 15 for July 12th, 2011. Bruce Dale. TWiT Photo is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off your new account for 6 months, go to Squarespace.com and use the offer code TWITPhoto7. And by Audible.com. To download the free audiobook of your choice, visit audiblepodcast.com/TWITPhoto. It's time for This Week in TWiT Photo, or something like that. TWiT Photo is here. Catherine Hall is here, our favorite photographer. Hi, Catherine. Great to see you.
Nice to see you too, Leo.
I'm so excited about our guest today.
Me too.
Yeah. This is a guy you and I both met in Tasmania when we went with Mikkel Oland on that Lightroom adventure. It was so much fun.
Did. And
yeah.
I have to say, I knew bits and pieces about him. I knew he was Magazine Photographer of the Year and White House Photographer of the Year, and he has things in the Voyager. Do you know he has an image in the Voyager spacecraft?
On the spacecraft?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's the one that's going out to the stars.
Yes.
Yeah.
To represent
I didn't
Earth.
know that.
He
Wow.
has a stamp. And I kind of expect him to be a jerk.
You'd never met him?
No.
Neither had I.
And so I think, he does all this stuff. He's got to be
one of the nicest guys ever.
And he's the nicest guy ever.
Shares his techniques with us. He's also an enthusiast, much in the same way that a lot of people watch this network are enthusiasts. He loves gadgets. He loves mixing gadgets with his photography. Let's introduce him. What do you say? Bruce Dale, great to have you on TWiT Photo.
It's good. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
His website.
And I don't know why you think I'm a gadget man.
You are.
Okay. What is that?
This is something that you are the first people to see this. We're working on this. We're going to manufacture this. You know, the secret to good panoramas is getting a nice even horizon. So you put these glasses on, and you can then control.
You're not going to make those. It's a pair of sunglasses with a level on it.
Yeah, no, it's nice.
You're joking, I know.
My kids gave me that for Christmas.
I love Bruce Dale. This is his website, brucedale.com. And today we're going to take a look at a lot of pictures and talk about Bruce's career. He's such an inspiration to all of us. How many years at National Geographic?
30 years on the staff.
Wow.
Full time, yeah. Hey,
yeah. And most of that time was basically only for the Geographic. And they were very parochial. We weren't allowed to do any freelancing on the side at all.
I didn't. So, when were you a White House photographer?
Boy, I'd have to ask one of my historian friends. What was they? I don't remember.
We're just going to take pictures of show pictures that Bruce has taken over the years. A slideshow of those. If anything grabs your attention, that's Stonehenge, right?
That's a rare picture. Well, we'll talk about this.
Which one? This one, the bird one?
Roadrunner. Yeah. This evolved. This is a story that evolved out of a story I was doing in Desert Adaptations, and a roadrunner had been following me around one day, and I started to photograph him, and the roadrunner. Well, I had an assistant, and he said, "Bruce, there's a roadrunner behind you." And I turned around, and he was gone. And I said, "Oh, you're kidding!" And he said, and then he came back. And I don't know if those other pictures are in here or not, but he came back a second time, and he was carrying a cigarette, and he jumped in my camera case. And he came back a third time with a lizard and jumped in the vehicle. And
he loved you.
And that's the truth. He was courting me, and so we built a radio-controlled roadrunner. And that previous picture showed a bird that had come up, and he was courting him. And I'm sitting over here in the background by that truck. With a remote control camera.
Wait a minute, say this again, because I know the story, but I don't think people probably... A radio-controlled roadrunner?
There's a roadrunner on that model tank that has a servo unit in the tail that'll make it go up and down or left and right, depending on whether I want it to male or female.
So this thing on top, that's a stuffed roadrunner.
Yeah, and...
On a camera.
And there's 2 tape recorders on board there, too. And at this point here, a roadrunner is coming up to mine and saying, "Hello, sweetheart," and
And then this is another picture of the
and
roadrunner kind of attacking.
Well, what had happened here was the previous picture, I think, showed a stick exchange. I put a stick in I put a stick in my model's mouth, and the wild roadrunner came up to it and accepted it. And this is basically it means let's go build a nest together. It was a courtship thing. And but my tank had a broken track that day and would only go in circles. And so the wild roadrunner suddenly realized there was an imposter, and he started to attack it and tear it apart. And
wow,
this is a gadget, one of many gadgets Bruce has created over time. I know a few stories because we spent some time together in Tasmania. Can you tell us a story of it's probably the most famous National Geographic cover of all time. It was a 3D holographic cover that you shot, Bruce, of a smashing crystal globe of the world.
It was the 100th anniversary edition.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Did that stress you out, Bruce?
Yeah. I'm here. Oh, well.
First of all, I found the picture of the roadrunner giving you a cigarette. Wait a minute, let me find it. There it is.
Yeah.
The truth comes out. That's what he's really doing out there.
A gift from a roadrunner.
He actually jumped in my camera case with that. No, there's a picture of him in the camera case. I don't know if I sent that to you.
I'll keep looking. I'm going through all these great pictures. And so tell us about the crystal globe.
The crystal globe was Bill Garrett's idea, and it was for our 100th anniversary. And what he was trying to do was make a statement. Our fragile planet, can we save it? So we had these handmade Steuben crystal balls, and he wanted to have it exploding and coming apart, and we're cracking really. And with a message that our fragile planet, can we save it? And he wanted to produce it as a hologram, in a 3D hologram, so that when you tip it one direction, you saw the globe in its entirety, and if you tipped it another direction, then the globe, you could see it cracking apart. So it got to be very complicated. I worked on that for several months, and there probably is in there somewhere a straight photograph of it that I shot that was a backup for the cover, which I actually like better than the hologram. But it was full of complications. It was not an easy story to pull off. It was when I'm looking at my picture on the screen, it's backwards. Did you
I can tell it's bugging you. I don't.
Yeah, that's what's wrong. I couldn't figure out why I'm seeing everything's backwards.
My
here.
pictures are backwards.
Is that typical? Have you got it flipped or something?
I could flip you. Want me to flip you? Let's just leave it as is. I don't know if it's backwards or if it's forwards. Raise your left hand, Bruce. It's inside out. That's it. It's inside out.
Yeah, that's my watch.
Yeah. Now there's a picture. I can't find the crystal globe. Although anybody who's subscribed to National Geographic will never forget that cover because it's really quite the famous cover. But I do have, I think, a diagram of what you needed to build. You had to build a very steady table, right, for this whole thing?
Well, holograms are produced on tables that are so sensitive to noise that a truck going by a block away will ruin the image. And so we were working with a pulsed laser, and these were done in California. And now this is totally different. This isn't it? This is the popcorn.
What is this? This is how you capture a popcorn popping?
This is a setup for a picture of a popcorn here. The beam, little dot red line indicates a laser beam.
Okay.
And somebody asked me if you could photograph popcorn popping. And I said, I don't know, let me try it. And so the first tests were done in the kitchen. I wanted to see if I could pop kernels of corn one at a time. And so I was putting them on the stove one at a time and popping them and catching them and throwing them into a little cup. When it happened that day, my son's guitar teacher was visiting, and he walked in the kitchen, and just as a kernel of corn popped, and I caught it and put it into a cup, and he said, "What are you doing, Mr. Dale?" And I said, "I'm making popcorn." And he said, "Oh." And he walked out of the room, and a couple of minutes later he came back and he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Dale." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "My dad makes popcorn and he puts it all in a pan." And I said, "Really?" I said, "You really think that'll work?" And he said, "Yeah, I know. I saw him do it." So now, somewhere in there, you'll see a picture of one kernel of corn going up in the air.
Wow.
You look through it while you're watching this one, and you'll see five. It looks like five stages of kernel of corn that's going up in the air. Not this one. This one was done for an ad for Canon. When they saw the other picture, somewhere in there, you should have a picture.
I don't have it. I have just the Canon pictures.
Kernel of corn going straight up. Shoot. Anyways, in fact, in this one here, you can also see it. You see that one kernel of corn? There's some, just to the, well, I don't know if that's right or your left center, there's a little bit of gas coming out.
Yes.
When a corn pops, it actually, what happens, the moisture in the corn expands and the gases crack the corn and it goes up like a jet engine. And so here you can see one of them.
You caught
that's actually shooting up in the air.
That's amazing.
The other one was a single kernel of corn going up in the air, shot with five strobes at different intervals, using a Dale beam that my son had designed. That was another shot in there somewhere.
This is just a completely random assortment of pictures.
We should have those in some order. I apologize.
Oh, I don't mind, because it's so much fun. When it shows the breadth of your work, one of the things you were doing when we were in Tasmania was infrared photography.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, there's a way to modify cameras that you must be familiar with, where you can remove the filter that cuts out the infrared light and basically passes all the infrared light and allows you to shoot infrared pictures. And I had an assignment a couple years ago to photograph Arlington Cemetery, and I decided to do it with infrared because to me it kind of was a you're photographing with these invisible souls with this invisible light.
Yeah.
And it wound up running as a chapter in a book and also as a chapter in the National Geographic magazine.
And I think this picture is at Arlington, is it not?
Yeah, they hung at Arlington Cemetery. There's one picture in here that's a very wide panorama, not this one, but another one showing on the far left the Washington Monument, and the far right you'll see the Pentagon where it was hit by a plane. And that picture ran as a 20-foot wide print. I made a 20-foot wide print by 5 foot tall.
Here's the infrared of me and Peter Krogh eating.
Sorry, you don't look very flattering there. That's, yeah.
I don't care. I love it. And in fact, I'm honored because on my birthday a few years ago, Bruce gave me a print of the panorama here that he took at this beautiful bay, this beautiful pristine bay, and I treasure it. It is a beautiful panorama. But these are all infrared shots, and it does give you.
This is from Tasmania.
Yeah, it gives you a really green turns white.
Yeah, it turns chlorophyll white, and generally, if you've got good blue skies, it'll turn pretty much black, and it changes things around quite a bit. Your pictures are, it's a little bit sometimes hard to preceive how they're going to look, because sometimes you might be wearing a black shirt there,
right,
and it comes out white. Other times it comes out black. Now your pants, for example, I'm not sure what those are. In fact, at Arlington Cemetery, I had one series of pictures of a group of men in uniform, and they were all wearing navy blue, except some of them the tops came out white, and some of them the pants came out white. And then the Navy asked me what I was doing, and I said nothing. And they insisted that there's no way that could happen. They all are built to military specs, but
apparently not.
Some were synthetic or different. This is my watch collection after a shoot.
I love this.
Can you explain the Dale beam to us? And go back to that watch. Did you use the Dale beam for that one too, where the bullet's hitting the watch?
Somewhere in there, you flip by a picture of a bullet impacting on a watch, and it shows the compression of air molecules of a watch of a bullet striking a watch. And this is it here, yeah. And that was not planned. That was one of those serendipitous things that happens. I wasn't expecting that flash of light there, and I found out later that is the compression of air molecules. And this was done for a story on time, and it was just sort of a tongue-in-cheek illustration of killing time.
Literally. So this is the Dale beam is what you used to take.
Yeah, and there should be another picture in there showing a setup for this. I think I stuck that in there. A little illustration similar to the one you saw of the popcorn popping, and it shows the shock wave. It looks like this. The Dale beam, in this case, is emitting a light emitting diode, but it also has a microphone, and a bullet puts out a shock wave with an angle depending on the velocity of the bullet. And all you have to do is put that beam somewhere on the bullet path, and you can control the bullet 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch at a time, and you can actually use your naked eye, and you can actually see the bullet stopped. It's amazing, the sensitivity of the eye. That bullet was traveling at 4,000 feet per second almost.
It's truly an amazing shot, I have to say.
Do you work with your son a lot, and is that easy or hard?
Well, we have in the past. He's too busy now he's got a full-time job. But the last thing collaboration was the picture of the popcorn popping that involved that had a blue background. That was done as an ad for a newspaper ad for Japan.
I did find the single kernel.
Here's the single one. Yeah, so you see the popcorn there. The very first one shows the kernel just as it lifts off. And then the second one, you can see it splitting open and gas coming out. And then as it climbs, it gets larger.
I think you have it's really one of the things I loved about traveling around with you is Bruce's ability to talk to people was incredible. Like yours, Catherine, where he would make friends with people and draw them out and get great people photography out of it, like you do. But he also loves mechanical things. And so it's an interesting combination.
It's crazy. Actually, I don't... so many photographers specialize in one thing, and I'm just wondering, you do all these different types of photography, and you're obviously very passionate about photography. Do you have a favorite type, and why?
I think that picture was made, the last one was made just as I left the Geographic, and to me it was kind of symbolic. It was on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. It's kind of which direction you want to go in your life, which road do you want to take.
Yeah.
This was... But I think that the most important pictures that I've made were the ones in China, books on American mountain people, traveling with gypsies from England to India, recording truly journalistic capturing moments. And yet now I enjoy doing panoramas like this and landscapes.
You were pretty young when you did that trip with the gypsies, weren't you?
I did that in 74, I think, 1974. It was quite a few years ago. We drove from England all the way to India, and not sure if we have any pictures in there or not.
Kind of following the Silk Road with the gypsies?
Well, actually, what we were doing was retracing the migratory route of gypsies. The gypsies all left India about 1,000 years ago during the invasions of Genghis Khan, and they migrated from India up through Europe up to England. And traveling with a good ethnologist, you could actually tell you could meet a group of gypsies in Germany, and you could tell which route they took. The ones that went south of the Mediterranean
really? Wow.
had one word for road, and the ones that went north used drome, which is a Greek word. But that was a fascinating trip. One you could never do today. I wish you don't appreciate these at the time. But you wouldn't. I wouldn't want to be. We camped along the road in Afghanistan, Pakistan, everywhere.
This is not a gypsy, I don't think.
This is Baron de la Rede. This is this was taken on the Ile Saint Louis, and this man has this extraordinary home called the Hotel Lambert, which was recently sold for $80 million to some prince from Qatar, and he invited me back to a party that was reminiscent of you. If any of you should see the film Midnight in Paris, he threw a party one evening, and he invited 400 guests, and the party ran from midnight until dawn. He had 3 orchestras. It was entirely candlelit. It was like stepping back in a Renaissance painting. Yeah, I was allowed to go long, but black tie, 1 camera, black, no flash.
Wow.
It was just like it was stepping back. It was like going back in a Renaissance painting.
So, Bruce, with your people photography, I mean, you photograph everything from gypsies to this $80 million estate, and people are comfortable with you everywhere you go. What's your secret to making people feel at ease?
I think, I can say that working with gypsies, I found that just showing an interest in somebody was the first thing. If there was that was not the picture, but there was a gypsy once that did not want to be photographed, but he had a cat. So I said, "Can I photograph your cat?" And he said, "Sure." And I photographed his cat, and pretty soon he picked it up, and before long he had it in his hand, and he was cuddling it, and I kept photographing him, and he didn't mind. One of the problems working with translators is sometimes I like to ask questions, and I'll ask dumb questions, questions that I may know the answer to, but I want them to think, gosh, they're smarter than this guy from America. He's not so smart after all. I'm smarter than he is. So, but you have to be careful because some translators would know they'll say, well, that's this, so and so. And I say, look, I have to coach them ahead of time and say, look, when I ask you a stupid question, I want you to ask the person. I want him involved in it. So that's one way that has worked for me.
Do you, as far as people photography is concerned, do you have any particular favorite shots? Or, I think one of the things that people remark about with your work is that some of the people's highlights of their lives has been photographed for you by National Geographic, especially in your American West stories. How does that make you feel?
Yeah.
I don't know if I understand the question.
There's a lot of burden on you. I mean, you're making these...
Yeah, well, you do have a responsibility to the people, and that's something that that weighs on my mind. There's some pictures that I've recently been going back to rephotograph people. Those are gypsies. I've recently been going back to photograph people in the American Mountain people. I want to see how it's affected their lives. And it has, most cases it hasn't affected them, and in some cases I think profoundly.
This is a classic. This is an amazing picture.
So, Bruce, do you want to share how you almost didn't get the steam engine photos in China?
I was telling Catherine about just last week I was watching television and I saw someone holding up a page out of National Geographic magazine showing a steam engine. And that was taken at the Datong Railway Works in China. And the person on television was explaining that in Boone, Iowa, they had a narrow gauge track, and they had a diesel engine, but they didn't have a steam engine, and they were trying to figure out where to get a steam engine, and they saw this magazine article, and they decided, well, let's go there, and they wound up buying the last steam engine made in China, maybe in the world, I don't know. It probably came pretty close to them not having that engine because we were in that town and they would not allow me to photograph that factory. Who knows? They may have been making missiles too. But in any event, and every once in a while I had to know how far to push them. And in this case, I was pushing. And so I decided the night before to have a meeting with the writer, and I said to Bill, I am sick of course, I know that they're bugging the room, that they're listening to everything. So I'm saying I am sick and tired of working here. They won't let me photograph anything that's worthwhile, like the engine factory. I said, tomorrow we're going to tell them we're leaving. Well, the next morning, very first thing, Mr. Dale, we have reconsidered it. We think it would be okay if you photograph the steam factory.
So
this is a video that you put on Vimeo that I just love. Yeah. 30 years of bad pictures.
You need the volume for it.
Should I? Well, yeah. People will watch it
and
they'll hear Bruce's intro. He explains why he calls his pictures bad pictures. Here's a little Bruce Dale.
Thank for my initials, B.A.D., Bruce Albert Dale. I spent 30 years as a staff photographer for National Geographic, traveling throughout the world. When I first started working at the Geographic, it was a tradition to stamp your initials on your film box after you had reviewed the slides. This went on until one day I caught someone throwing out my boxes while commenting, "I don't know why we're throwing these out. They don't look that bad." Following are some of the highlights of my work for the Geographic during that period.
It's a really great set of wonderful pictures from Bruce Dale. Bruce, we're going to take a little break and come back with more. We want to get your tips, suggestions for photographers. We have a lot of amateurs like me. You were so generous with me in Tasmania, helping me become a better photographer. We're going to get a couple of tips from you and maybe talk about a favorite picture of yours as well in just a little bit. Bruce Dale is our guest, brucedale.com, and all of his pictures are B-A-D, but in a very G-O-O-O-D way. The breadth and range of the work that you've done is just... it's inspiring to all of us. But before we go on, I want to talk a little bit about people who are creating their own portfolios and tell them about Squarespace.com, the secret behind exceptional websites. A great website is where you can show your work in your own portfolio, and you don't have to rely on other services like Facebook or Twitter to do it. Squarespace is your site on the net and can be a really wonderful place for you. I invite you to go to squarespace.com right now and click that green button and set up your site. Now, this is hosting plus software, and that's really important. All you have to do to create this first site, by the way, is no credit card needed. Just a name for the site, a password, and an email address, and you'll be creating your own site. All of the Squarespace software is available to you, including their iPhone and iPad app, their incredible templates, their beautiful photo galleries, and I think for photographers and people like me, budding photographers, this is a great feature of Squarespace.com. Go to the portfolio page in their examples. You'll see a lot of people have put together their art and photography portfolios. A lot of photographers use Squarespace. And one of the things I think is so important if you're a creative is that each site looks different. You don't want to look like the other guy's photography site. And boy, I tell you, Squarespace gives you such great templates that you never do. Squarespace, go there right now. If you decide to sign up, very affordable, as low as $10 a month. That's hosting and software. And if you use the offer code TWiTPhoto7 when you sign up, you'll get 10% off your brand new account for 6 months. Squarespace.com, the secret behind exceptional websites, and one of our favorite sponsors, especially for photography pros. We're talking with Bruce Dale. He is a legend among photographers, a great photographer. 30 years of bad pictures. I love that, Bruce.
I know.
That's a great tagline. And I do invite you to go watch this Vimeo video because there's the globe, by the way.
There's the globe. That's amazing.
All of the things that we talk about are in here. How many Steuben glass globes did you have, Bruce?
I had 5 of them that we broke, and sometimes I would reglue them back together again.
I mean, can you imagine regluing that back together? That's crazy.
And that's the cover, by the way. This is the amazing. And you were telling me that this actually may have been the beginning of the end for National Geographic because this was so expensive to produce that the company said, maybe we got to rethink how much we're spending on this magazine.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, imagine putting this holographic cover on there. But what a brilliant cover. Nobody will ever forget it. These are the Polaroids.
I wouldn't want to glue that back together.
Those were not crystal balls. Those were just ordinary glass that I was using for
testing
tests.
Yeah.
And this is the machine that you used so that you could time the photo exactly right.
Are you a closet engineer?
I did the photographic setup part of that. We had a holographic engineer along that was entirely responsible for all the holography portion of it.
What a tricky job, though. And to get that shot exactly as the bullet breaks the glass, that's the trick.
Well, I designed a device there that allows because it was a hologram, I did not want it suspended in any way. And so I wanted it to drop through the air, so we're actually dropping the globe through the air.
Oh my gosh.
Shooting it as it's
the days before digital.
How long did you spend on that one image?
I must have spent a couple of months on this,
Wow.
At least, yeah. And
did they just call you up and say, "Hey, we want you to do the 100th anniversary cover"?
Something like that, yeah. Can you help us?
And did they have a concept for you at that time, or did you help?
The concept, well, I did help develop some of the design of the globe, but basically the concept, it was Bill Garrett's, the editor's design idea, and it was Our Fragile Planet, Can We Save It?
Yeah.
December 1988. Now, there's a little flaw there. What is that?
You're looking at the pellet that's reflecting inside of the globe.
Wow.
In that spot.
That's how it broke.
And you can actually see it reflected inside the globe.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's very cool. So are you ready to give us some tips, Bruce?
Sure.
So close one eye while viewing a scene.
And I know he does this because I watched him do it.
Yeah. I wonder why a lot of his tips have to do with closing your eyes.
Well,
very interesting.
I think a lot of photographers do this too. Even some of the photographers that you have these little, who was the photographer?
Charlie. Charlie had his little frame
that
because he was shooting in medium format.
Yeah.
So he'd bring his little frame with him and look at everything through the frame.
And you're basically doing the same thing, but by closing one eye, you basically eliminate the stereo effect. You get rid of that enhancement that you get with stereo, and you see it the way it's going to look on flat paper. So I tell people that that's often one of the first things you can do get a better idea of what it's going to look like.
That helped me
And,
so much because it flattens it out,
Yeah.
and now you're seeing kind of the image. But it's not just closing your eyes.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, you gotta squint, Bruce. Is that
well, then
tip
you can-
number
then the
2 is
next-
squint?
After you close it, then you might want to try squinting. And basically, what this does, it eliminates that incredible range that your eye has that your camera does not have. And you see with the naked eye, you can see. Well, if I move over here, for example, this is funny. When I move one way on the screen, it goes the opposite way in both ways. That window in the back is totally blown out. The camera won't pick that up. But if I turn around and look out there, I can see all the detail in the world. And the same thing with that down in that fireplace there. Your eye will pick up all the detail. But so by squinting, you're going to get a better idea of how the camera is going to see it. You're not going to see detail in the highlight or certainly in the shadow areas.
All right. So we got to squint and we have to close one eye. And your final tip
Stand on one leg and wear my goggles.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
How do you choose your viewpoint?
Carefully. If you're using a tripod, make sure you pick your spot before you put the camera on the tripod, because you're more apt to just put the camera where it feels good or where it wants to go. So I suggest you take your camera and choose that spot really carefully. And for example, if you were photographing me right here, going up a little bit. Whoops, I can't get.
He's arranging himself now, recomposing.
Trying to eliminate that light in the background, you see, which is a distraction.
Right.
And there's a little distraction over there.
Right.
Man, right here.
Skype is not ideal for composition, is it?
Yeah, so you can move. I'm going to look at one. You can move real carefully, and you can compose the picture. Boy, everything is backwards. This is hard.
Yeah, we're seeing it. We're seeing it right around. I just do that for you, Bruce, in case you want to comb your hair.
Do you?
And if you put it on a tripod, you're liable to put it right where it goes. But if you compose real carefully and eliminate all those little detail, those little distractions, and then bring your tripod and put it right there at that spot.
I think you did that with this. This is your picture that became a postage stamp.
This is this was carefully composed. I think I remember popping a couple flashes off, and I didn't have anything fancy remote, so I had the camera was on a tripod as high as I could get it, and I had a self timer, and I think I had it set for about a quarter of a second or an eighth of a second, and when the shutter opened, I'd pop the flash off by hand because I wanted to get closer to that foliage. Yeah, and this was a surprise to me because I had unbeknownst to me, it was sold to the post office as a stamp, and I first heard about it when somebody mailed me a first day issue and asked me if I'd sign it.
So you weren't thinking postage stamp when you composed that.
Oh, are you kidding? No.
But it's just right for putting the USA and the 40 cents right on there. You see.
Yeah,
and
there you go.
That next picture, that's kind of interesting. Let's go to that next this is a priest in Slovakia, in a small village that everybody warned me this priest was not very friendly, and so this girl with the glasses on her head is an interpreter, and she talked her way in to see him late one night after he returned from a trip, and he finally sat down, and somehow it came out that his hobby was postage stamps. And luckily, I had some prints along of that stamp, and a photographic 11 by 14 print. And I ran out to the car, excused myself, ran out and brought the print back in, and he looked at it, and his eyes lit up, and he went upstairs and he came down with the original stamp that he had collected.
That's
and
one way
wow.
to make friends.
I saw him the next day, and he'd been up past midnight. And he had gone through all the old ledgers and found my great-grandfather, my great-great-great-grandfather, and dates going back into the early 1800s.
No kidding.
Wow. So that actually leads me to your fourth tip. He gave us 4.
Love it.
And that has to do with spontaneity and serendipity. Can you explain how they play a role with your photography?
Well, I think what I was getting at was that I don't ever go off without something in mind, some kind of photograph in mind, but that is never the picture that I really, really, really want. The picture that I'm looking for is something that I could never think of in 1,000 years. Something totally, totally serendipitous. There are a lot of pictures that I make that my favorite pictures are pictures that you never, ever planned on. I was probably looking for something else, or had planned on something else, but the one that I came away with was a total surprise.
So did this happen to you when you were in China and buses broke down?
Yeah.
These China images are so
Tell us
incredible.
why you were actually happy when your bus broke down in China.
Well, the early trips, the early trips to China, the buses would break down regularly, like not just a couple of times a week. There would be like 3 or 4, 5, 6 times a day. And at first I was, oh no. And then I thought, God, what an opportunity, because you never knew where they would break down. They were totally out in the most remote parts of the country. And then I got real daring, and I'd say to the driver, all right, we're going that way, right? And I would just walk down the road, and I'd say, you pick me up when you get it fixed. And I would walk into villages, and just walking in, and these villagers would look at me, and they hadn't seen foreigners in 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Amazing images. How many times did you go back to China?
I've been there more than, at least 10 times. If you include Hong Kong, a dozen times, more than that.
So you were obviously shooting film at this time.
Yeah, this is all film.
When did you transition to digital, and do you still carry an 8x10 with you?
This, by the way, is the picture of the Datong Railroad factory that they let me photograph. And that factory shut down within a year.
That is the most amazing picture.
It's amazing.
Yeah, isn't it like the 1850s or something? Isn't it strange?
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Now, do you think you could have shot this on digital, or is this unique?
Oh, you could have done it. Surely could have done it better on digital. I didn't see these pictures until 3 months later.
Good point.
Sometimes
he's lucky they didn't get thrown out.
Generally, they were. I was lucky with my cameras, but I remember once on the Yangtze River, and I always shoot with a couple of cameras, and I number the cameras, the film 1, 3, 5 different cameras, and I mix them up. And when the film gets sent back, I separate it and send back the even rolls in one batch and the odd rolls in another, so they're always kind of apart. But in the gorges, the 3 gorges on the Yangtze River once, it got late in the day, and I was photographing somebody getting on a boat, and I was panning, and I started slowing the shutter speed down, and I went down to a 30th of a second, then a 10th of a second, and the camera went zip. I thought, oh, that doesn't sound right. I went down to a quarter of a second, and it went zip. And I thought, oh shit, and I went down to half a second, and it went zip. And oh no, and one camera that entire day was shooting at 1,000th of a second. Lost an entire half a day's of work. I had 2 cameras, so I did get some pictures, but I lost some really, really nice and very significant pictures.
You wouldn't have gotten this picture. That's a beautiful shot.
Yeah, you could do this in digital. You could do
not at 1/1000th
digital nowadays. Yeah. The last somewhere buried in those pictures I sent you is an underwater panorama. That happens to be the very last film picture I shot.
Oh, let me see if I can.
And when was that? Wow. When did you take that shot?
About 2 years ago, down in the Turks and Caicos Islands. I had always wondered if you could do an underwater panorama, so I set up a tripod underwater and put a camera on there with a panorama head and was photographing a scene, and the next day I took the camera out again, but I didn't close the back properly, and I flooded the camera. So that was the last. Those were the last film pictures I've ever made.
Here he is with his film camera.
Yeah, it's underwater. I've got a Getzo tripod there. I didn't want to use my really right stuff head, so I bought a panorama head. I made a panorama head from something I bought at Home Depot.
He by the way, Getzo tripod, really right stuff heads. That's one of the things I learned from Bruce on that trip to Tasmania. Here's the pano. This is the last film image Bruce Stale ever shot.
But he shows, he does things creative to come with solutions that you went to Home Depot. Bruce,
I love that.
Bruce, can you share a way to diffuse light in a really cheap way, something that you might be able to find at your local shipping store?
I think you're this is a leading the witness.
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday. I was watching. Well, some people. I've often bought reflector cards at Home Depot, but one of the lightest things you can travel with that works surprisingly well as a diffuser and does not cut out light the way a normal sailcloth will is bubble wrap. And I've used bubble wrap for pictures on occasion. Quite a few times. I've had pictures published with bubble wrap. I remember in Switzerland a watchmaker where the sun was coming in and just was too harsh in the room, and I just put bubble wrap over the window, and it diffuses the light and it bounces it around in 1,000 different directions, but it doesn't really cut down the level of light much.
Do you do a lot of photoshopping, Bruce?
Well, yes and no. For journalism, absolutely none. But the problem with, and I've done some advertising photography where, yeah, I have got part of it was made in Seattle, and another skidding car was a skidding pad here. Where I hired
in advertising, anything goes, right?
And the actual car we didn't want to identify as a Ford, so the front half is a Ford and the back half is a Lexus, but once you start doing stuff like that, nobody will believe you anymore. If you get a great picture, they'll think it's Photoshop. So
there's no Photoshop in here.
With your advertise. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
This is a picture, kind of that saddle. That's Ulysses Grant's saddle.
Wow.
And years ago, I was doing a story on Appomattox, and I wanted to photograph his saddle, which was in a small museum. And I talked to the curator to let me take it out, and I took it out and I put it on this fence, and I found that that's a horse the same color as Grant's, and the first time I shot this picture, I set the tripod up, I focused on the fence, I used a long lens so I can get the horse out of focus. Then I put the saddle on the fence, I walked back to my camera, and as I walked back to the camera, I heard this clippity 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 clop, and I turned around in time to see that horse grab that saddle and wing it into the field.
Oh my gosh.
Holy smokes, I ran out there and rescued the saddle and couldn't find any damage. And then at that point, I ended up put a 20-foot cable release on the camera, and that's how I shot this picture. But this saddle now is at the one of the military museums down here in Virginia, and they've got it insured for $300,000.
Oh boy!
Oh my gosh! Have you ever damaged anything that's of particularly high value or lost? What's your
living or does that include living objects?
What's the story behind this picture here?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. This poor bird, honestly. This is a long time ago. This was in Toledo, Ohio, when I worked on the Toledo Blade newspaper, and we got a call that there was a snow owl on an antenna. And can you photograph it? So I quickly looked in the encyclopedia, and one of the things I remember reading was that it had a wingspan of like 6 feet. And so I went out and I photographed this bird on the antenna, and the owner of the house said, "Are you done?" All the bird lovers from the area the word passed quickly, and everybody was congregating at his house, and he got a little upset. So he said, "I want to get rid of that bird. You finished shooting?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'm going to go up on the roof and shake the antenna." I said, "You shouldn't do that." He said, "That's okay." So he went up on the roof, and he said, "You ready?" And I said, "Ready." And he shook the antenna. Bird didn't, just kind of cocked his head and looked at him, and so the next door neighbor said, "Oh, I've got some firecrackers. I'll throw those up."
No.
And I said, "No, you better not do that. And that's illegal." And he said, "That's okay. I can do that." So he said, "You ready?" And he threw a firecracker and went bang, and the bird just kind of cocked his head and looked at him. And then he said, "Look, I've got a shotgun that's a lot louder. I'll get that."
Oh no.
I said, "No, you don't want to do that." And he said, Yeah. He said, "I'm a federal mediator. I know all the police." And I said, "Well, all right." So he said, "You ready?" And I said, "Ready." And I'm looking through my 400 millimeter lens, and I see bang, and the feathers flying.
Oh dear.
Feathers flying. And I thought, "Oh my God." I said, "What in the world?" And I didn't even shoot a picture, and the bird plummeted to the roof.
Oh dear!
And everybody started yelling at me. "You told him to shoot the bird. You told him."
No.
I didn't tell him to shoot the bird.
I'm glad we could set the record straight, Bruce.
Yeah.
I did not shoot that bird.
Now you don't do any glamour stuff, but this is an awfully glamorous picture.
Yeah, this is Terry Denton. This is a woodcarver's daughter. Very sad story about her. Probably one of my favorite pictures.
Beautiful.
Behind this is her. She comes from a family of very, very talented woodcarvers deep in the mountains in the Boston Mountains of Arkansas, and I'd heard about this family, and so I decided to go visit them, and flew into Little Rock and then into not Little Rock, Fort something somewhere south of in the Boston Mountains. Rented a car, drove up here, drove down this mountain 2 miles, went through a couple creeks, down through the woods. Her father was sitting there. He didn't believe I was a photographer for National Geographic. And he had 5 daughters. Terry was the oldest. And I got to know them really, really well. I still keep in touch with them. In fact, I talked to Laura just yesterday. Not Terry. This is Laura's sister. Anyways, Terry was in this creek, and I had on that flight at Ozark Airlines, they gave out jelly donuts. They were the best jelly donuts I've ever had. And I told her, so she gave me an extra one, and I had it in my camera case. And when I went to shoot these pictures, I needed room in my camera case, so I took it out of the camera case and I put it in a Halliburton case where a 500 millimeter lens belonged, and shut the Halliburton case up. And we're down by the creek, and Terry says, what do you got in that silver case over there? And I said, jelly donuts. She said, oh, come on, you don't have jelly donuts. And I said, sure, do you want one? And I opened it up, and that's what captured that kind of...
I was wondering why she was so warm.
She's very happy.
She's very happy.
Now, let me ask you about lighting in this. Is it all natural light or using bouts?
Of course, all natural lighting, backlit. She's a spectacular carver, had a lot of problems, and eventually died of an overdose.
Oh, that's sad.
Accidental overdose. What was I going to say? That picture is the only picture I've ever had stolen. It was in an exhibition once, and somebody stole it. And it got published in the magazine, and she got a stack of letters a foot high, some of them proposals.
Oh, I bet.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Oh, I bet.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Beautiful shot, though. Just a gorgeous shot. We're talking to Bruce Dale. Bruce Dale.
On there.
Say again?
My face is frozen on the screen with eyes open and mouth open and shut. There we go.
It looks fine here, Bruce. I could just tell you that. It looks good here.
I shouldn't be looking at myself, but I get
here. Look at something much more attractive. How about look at Catherine?
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's easy to look at.
Much easier to look at.
But no, that was a sad case, and I actually sent you a little story about her. You can take a look when you get a chance. Take a look at it. It's in that batch of stuff under Woodcarver's daughter.
I saw that, yeah, and we will look at that, yeah.
So, Bruce, you technically retired 5 years ago, but
yeah, he's really taking it easy, isn't he?
Obviously, the passion of photography is continue forward. Now, you're working on Aurora project right now. Do you want to tell us anything about that?
There's a little village about 150 miles right straight west of Washington, D.C. called Aurora, and some friends of mine started 100 years ago, it was a destination point for people from Washington because it's up 3,000 feet and cool, and so therefore people would go there to spend the summers. The whole big hotel burned down, but a lot of the little cottages are still there, and so there's an effort to turn it into an art center, and they got a nice grant from the state of West Virginia. And I've been photographing it and doing a series of videos. One is called Spring. I already done Winter in Aurora, Autumn in Aurora, and these are, you can find links to those on my website, or they're on Vimeo.com. And I'm currently working on Springtime, and probably will make a stop there next week to do a little bit of summer in Aurora work, photography.
What keeps you so passionate about photography?
Well, I don't know what keeps me passionate. I'm passionate about a lot of things, but I find it a challenge. I like the different challenges. I like learning new things, but I find it frustrating. This is from Winter in Aurora, and the nice thing this was actually one of the first video I ever shot. Actually, this little camera, it's a little Panasonic. This was the GF1, I believe. Or G1. Anyways, it has a little dedicated button for video. So I was setting up shooting that still picture of that house, and suddenly the wind started blowing, and it was wimping across there. And I just instantly pressed the video button. And then a neighbor came down the road to feed the horses, and luckily I had everything set up, and he's walking down in the snow, and these horses are walking towards him. It's really a nice moment. And so I started shooting more video. This was 2 years ago in Christmas time, and so I shot a little more video. I had a lot of trouble at the beginning stopping. I tended to shoot a lot of vertical videos, which doesn't really work unless you're willing to turn your television set sideways, and that.
I shot a lot of those too by accident.
I've done that so many times.
I think you have the GH one, which is the same Panasonic.
That was
the Micro Four Thirds, and it's a great
models. The one I'm using now is a GH2.
Yeah, the new one is, and it's just gorgeous.
The GF one, I take it back. It was a GF one that I shot that with. That was one of the really compact ones. Very nice. It's still a very good little camera.
Yeah, and then they're doing some really interesting stuff. I'll tell you what, let's take a break, and I'm going to ask a couple more questions about the gear that you use. Bruce Dale is our guest, brucedale.com. Catherine Hall, of course, our host from catherinehall.net. And we are talking about photography. We love photography, don't we? And when you get somebody like Bruce, it just makes you love it even more. Before we go on, though, I want to talk about something else. I also love audio books from audible.com. When we had that long trip to Tasmania, the 20-hour plane trip, it was Audible that got me through that. As always, Audible is a real lifesaver for me, whether it's a commute, at the gym, a long plane trip. Having audiobooks that you can listen to just really transforms that trip and makes it actually something that you want to do. I'm going to get you into Audible right now. I'm going to send you to audiblepodcast.com/twitphoto, and you can find out all about Audible by getting your first book free. audiblepodcast.com/twitphoto. You'll be signing up for the gold account. That's a book a month. First month's free. First book is free. The only challenge is going to be picking that first book. There's so many great choices. I just love Audible. I see there's a new one from an early Google employee, Doug Edwards, who was employee number 59. It's called, I love the name, I'm Feeling Lucky. One of the things I do with Audible, of course, in my profession, there's a lot to read, and I use Audible to keep caught up with my business stuff. There's a lot of great business books about the tech industry. But I also have to say Audible's great entertainment. And I love listening to books like, Book 5 of The Song of Ice and Fire just came out. That's pretty exciting. Roy Dotrice is back. If you watched the Game of Thrones on HBO this season, you know that it's the first of 5. This is the 5th book. I think the 5th and final book is now out. Just came out today.
It's kind of amazing the breadth of...
Isn't it incredible?
Because I do a lot of business books and stuff like that too, and it's amazing how much they have. Obscure books,
75,000 titles. There's classics, science fiction, mysteries, thrillers, and if you've got kids at home, whether they're 2-year-olds or 15-year-olds, really great choices for kids as well. And audiobooks is like The Lightning Thief. It's just fantastic. These are great audiobooks that young adult books as well as kids books for all ages. I just think you're going to love it. So here's what you do. Go to audiblepodcast.com/twitphotos. Sign up for that gold account, and you can get your first book free. We love Audible. We know you will too. Audible.com. These are all the new books. I go 14 pages of new books. I go here every week or so, and it's endless. audiblepodcast.com/twitphoto. We thank Audible for their support of TwitPhoto. So Bruce, I know you had a D70 because that was the one you were doing the infrared shots with.
Yeah. The cameras are tools to me, and I use whatever is best for the occasion. I used a Nikon D700 recently for some pictures where I really need to use high ISO. But I'm enjoying a lot of these lightweight cameras. That the GH2s are great. The little Lumix cameras are, so it's sort of basically a tool, and I use whatever is necessary. And I like playing with them. And I know I don't know if you're allowed to do this or not, but I just thought of something while you guys were during this break. But I've had more fun the past week with this little camera that's drop-proof, waterproof, dust-proof, freeze-proof. It has a GPS, a depth finder, an altimeter, what else is that? A bunch of other things. It does 3D, anyways. So
what is this camera? This magic camera?
So you can actually you can turn it on.
He's gonna drop it in water here.
And you can actually shoot pictures like this. And sometime if we ought to hook this up to do a little program where we can actually hook this into a little device there, because
put an iFi in there. Maybe you could catch it wirelessly.
In a glass of water. I did some the other day of my niece, and we had a lot of fun.
Who makes that
camera? It up.
Who makes that?
This is the kind of camera I need.
Who makes it? What is it?
It's a little. It's made by Lumix.
It's a Panasonic. All right. 12 megapixel. Oops.
What's the exact model of it?
It's a T.
Oh, that's a TS3, I think he is.
TS3, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be drop-proof from 6.5 feet.
$300.
Corner, like 12 times, and it does video, and it has audio, and it has stereo, and GPS, depth finder, altimeter, rates it all to metadata too. Even when you're underwater, it records your depth.
I know you were shooting with the Nikon D3 when we were in Tasmania.
Yeah.
But I think that it's obvious that you think of them as tools, and you shoot with whatever tool is right for the job.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so you don't have any particular loyalty to Canon or Nikon or Panasonic or anything like that.
No, again, what I tried Canons. I know Catherine uses Canons, and they're great little cameras. They're great cameras. I like. I think whatever you're most familiar with is the most important thing. Something that you can be so familiar with that you can just shoot instinctively without having to look at it. And the models are changing so fast on some of these cameras. Nikons are great because ergonomically they're terrific, and you pick up any Nikon, even the latest model, and usually you can figure it out in seconds. Some of these new cameras have got that touch screens, which I don't happen to like, but if you happen to be shooting video or something and you have a touch screen, you might want to actually use it. And these things have HDMI out so that you can have a large screen next to it, but the video, these little articulated screens are pretty nice in the back. And I don't normally like touch screens, but if you're shooting video and this is off camera, it might be someday. Maybe it'll be useful for something. I'm sure it will. But I generally like. I wish they would make a stripped down manual version that had nothing but f-stops and shutter speeds, and get rid of all of the fancy gear.
Here's a gear shot of you and Peter Krogh weighing the respective weights of your Gitzos.
All right.
Holding it up with the pinky.
Yeah.
You like it?
And that was actually I still use that tripod a lot. I was using it with a 500 Nikon lens recently, and it's a sturdy tripod. And if you get a 500 balanced beautifully on there, you can. It was surprising to me how stable it actually was.
How many shots? What proportion would you say that you're using a tripod?
What proportion on the tripod?
What proportion of the images you shoot are on tripod?
Depends on the type of story. On a book on gypsies or American Mountain People, probably 1%. Now that I'm shooting more video, I use a tripod a hell of a lot more. If I'm doing landscapes where I want to compose really carefully, 90% of them would be on a tripod. If I'm photographing people, 5%, 2% maybe even. I suppose there would be times that. What about you? Catherine? Do you use a tripod? You do marvelous people pictures. How often do you use a tripod?
I very rarely use a tripod simply because I move around a lot. So I like to compose it, and I'll move and I'll shift, and I feel like the tripod kind of holds me down.
Yeah.
Here's another shot. This is Bruce and Peter Krogh, and I can't remember who the third person was. We were waiting for the light to change. One lesson I learned from Bruce.
I think it looks like Bill Hendricks.
Winston. It was Winston Hendricks. You're right.
Oh, I love Winston.
Yeah, waiting for the light to change at Cloudy Lagoon, and I learned a lot of patience from Bruce. We waited about 2 hours for the perfect light for the perfect.
You can see the panorama head that panorama adapter for that Nikon.
That's from reallyRightStuff.com, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the longest you've ever waited for a landscape shot?
You're talking about in hours or days? Golly, I've gone back sometime day after day.
I was impatient. I took this shot right away, and I said, "I'm done.
You're done.
Let's have lunch." And Bruce, of course,
actually,
stuck
it's
around.
pretty nice.
Yeah, you got a much better shot, but thank you. I didn't waste any time.
Do you think that landscape or people require more patience?
Well, a different kind of patience. I think you have to have patience with people. The landscapes, you have to be willing to go back and watch the light, look at the light under different situations. One of the strange thing about landscapes, though, if you see something, you better do it then. I'm amazed at how many times I've gone back to a place to improve on it, and it is nowhere near as good as that first time. I mean, I've gone back to several places thinking, well, I'll shoot this again and make it better, but it's nowhere near as nice as the first time I was there.
Bruce is so inspiring. It's so nice to talk to you once again. I miss you, and I had such fun with you in Australia. You may be retired, but I know you.
Yeah.
Let's do that again.
I would love to go back. Somewhere, anywhere.
Come on, Mikkel.
Yeah, let's get Mikkel on.
We need you, Mikkel.
BruceDale.com is the website. Great place to go. Find that video on Vimeo of bad photography because it's really worth
hilarious.
Watching.
Yeah, and it's gorgeous photos.
Just amazing. Bruce, such a pleasure talking to you.
Bruce, always a pleasure.
Good seeing you guys, and look forward to seeing you again in person.
Thank you,
Thank
Bruce
you.
Dale,
Bye.
for joining us. Thank you also, Catherine Hall, CatherineHall.net. Great site. You're bringing us such great photographers. I'm just having such a blast meeting.
We have awesome ones coming up.
Who's coming up next?
We have Peter Eastway next week.
Love Peter Eastway, another guy I met in Australia.
And then I'm really excited. Today we secured Zach Arias for the following week.
Tell me about Zach. I don't know his stuff.
You got to wait. I'm not going to steal anything.
Surprise. We'll end up with a little more of the video from Bruce Dale and his career. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. We do this show, let's see, every Wednesday at about 1 p.m., Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday. I don't know. What day is this? Tuesday. 1 p.m., 1 to 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern. At live.twit.tv. Of course, you can get the show after the fact at twit.tv/photo. On behalf of Catherine, I'm Leo Laporte. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. On TWiT Photo.